This is MXUX. We're doing a analysis on Lordstown. Let's take a look at Foxconn. What is Foxconn up to in Q2 22? Okay, I'm back. Let's talk about Foxconn. Now, Lordstown, let me just preface everything by saying Foxconn is the largest electronics manufacturer in the world. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. We'll go through that later. They are pivoting their corporation to the BEV manufacturing sector. Uh, their North American hub, which is Canada, Mexico, and North America, is Lordstown, Ohio, and the manufacturing plant at Lordstown, Ohio. Their joint venture partner to develop electric vehicles at this North American hub is Lordstown Motors, which, through their joint venture agreement, is going to have the marketing rights to sell the vehicles developed as part of the joint venture in North America. Foxconn is going to have the rights to sell these vehicles elsewhere in the world. That's how this all works. But make no mistake about it, Lordstown's very important in their plan. Lordstown Motors, again, their North American hub. North America might be the second largest vehicle market after China now, but with the Chinese economy not doing as well, perhaps first, but certainly the first pickup truck market in the world. Lordstown battery electric vehicle pickup truck. So, giant company using Lordstown to launch battery electric vehicles in the largest pickup truck market. Anyway, I'm just trying to put things into perspective here. Foxconn and Lordstown are joined at the hip in North America. Okay, and since all these products that are going to be engineered and designed by Lordstown are going to be distributed elsewhere in the world by Foxconn, also throughout the world. So, Lordstown Motors is a key partner, certainly in that sense, with Foxconn. Let's just move on to what Foxconn is doing in Q2. We have covered Niavaji, we have covered Hightower. Let's just go through this information. There was a podcast by Odd Lots. I believe they had a Bloomberg analyst on there talking about Foxconn, a specialist with Foxconn. I believe he lived in Taiwan. I have gone through this presentation. I'm going to put a link to it in the comments. I have added to it through my own research, through additional sources. So let's just go through this. First item. Stellantis is in a partnership with Foxconn to produce a battery electric vehicle for the European market. This was stated clearly in this part. I cannot find evidence of this, although certainly Foxconn is in a partnership to develop in-car infotainment systems with Stellantis, also a self-driving aspect to this. So they mentioned BEV for the year. Can't find evidence of this. Perhaps that individual has inside information, but this is just to let you know that let's see if I can get this drawing pen working here, that Stellantis is also partnering. They're in a 50-50 joint venture partnership with Foxconn. Foxconn is like the Borg. You will be assimilated. Okay? They are looking for partnership. I just read a book on human stupidity, and a sign of intelligence is an individual who seeks out associations that benefits both himself or herself and the other party, and that's what Foxconn is doing. They are making all the right moves as far as that goes. Now, let's just move forward. Foxconn wants to approach manufacturing like PC manufacturing in the 90s. I built a few PCs in the 90s. Everything inside a PC in the 90s was standardized and interchangeable. Okay? Power supply. You could get 20 different power supplies from different manufacturers at different levels. And they would all plug into the same spot. This is an interchangeability that Foxconn wants to bring to battery electric vehicles. And Foxconn was big on making these components. Anyway, there are 30% margins on making vehicles like this. In other words, you could call this white label manufacturing or whatever you want to call it. When you make the inside of the item out of these standardized interchangeable parts, and the outside is all branding. So the big thing here would be like Dell in the 90s. They branded all their computers, all the components inside came from Taiwan or China, and the outside was all branding. This is the BEV manufacturing approach Foxconn wants to take. Foxconn is a chip maker and has been from the beginning. They made these commodity chips, and these are not CPUs like AMD or NVIDIA. These are, you know, chips that would run a game console or the input to a game console or a smart television or a smart toaster or perhaps a chip to operate a variable speed windshield wiper control. Anyway, they've been doing this from the beginning. There again are 30% margins on this. Now, Foxconn, the magic word with Foxconn is 30% margins. That's what they're shooting for. So just to give you an idea of what Foxconn is up to, we're going to go through this a little farther, but this is what they want to do. So look at the vehicles coming out of Lordstown, like a PC from the 90s, out of the Lordstown plant. Inside is all standardized, outside is all branding. Foxconn wants to make the innards. Okay, we're going to go through that in a minute. Now, Foxconn assembles the iPhone. That's 50% of the revenue for their company is assembling the iPhone. But more than that, Foxconn also makes all or most, can't get a number on that, of the components that go into the iPhone. Okay? All the chips and electronics. This is what they're talking about out of the Lordstown plant. Of course, it's going to be through supply chain initially, but later as partner OEM manufacturers right there on the site or around that site in the Voltage Valley. So I think a lot of people know that Foxconn assembles the iPhone. I'm not so sure they know that Foxconn also makes all the component parts that are assembled into the iPhone, with Apple doing the design and electronics and so forth. So if you look at this with the Lordstown model, Foxconn is going to assemble the Endurance. It's going to make most of the components eventually that go into the Endurance, all the chips and electronics, and Lordstown is going to sell it as the Endurance or as the white label. So it's going to be the same Apple iPhone model, only with battery electric vehicles, with Lordstown Motors being Apple in the case of the Endurance, and also in case of other vehicles they're going to make. Now, so this is news to a lot of people. 50% of revenue is the assembly of the iPhone. They also make most of the components. Okay, so they're not just in the business of putting things together. They're in the business of contract manufacturing and manufacturing these component parts. Okay, Foxconn wants to do the same thing for the battery electric vehicle market. They want to make components and assemble them into white label battery electric vehicles. So I have down here battery electric vehicles equals the 90s PC. Branded item, so Dell computer, full of customizable, interchangeable parts that all have been standardized to work together. So again, you can interchange them power supplies, whatever. You can configure your PC for Dell. Same thing is going to be with the battery electric vehicles. And this is the idea of the MIH platform. The MIH platform is going to enable these customizable, interchangeable parts. So look at it as a 90s PC. Look at your battery electric vehicle as a Dell computer from the 90s. And I think at some point, and I think this might even be underway already for fleet customers, but maybe I'm jumping the gun. These trucks are going to be customizable online. There's going to be a way to pick and choose different options and so forth that are going to go into the trucks, just as you would order a PC in the 90s and pick the hard drive and the memory and so forth. So this is what they're doing. They're taking their business model from the PC market, which they took into the phone market, which is more or less a PC, and they're moving that into the battery electric vehicle market. Now, here's the thing. The difference between the PC market of the 90s, Dell computer, and the battery electric vehicle market, the 90s PC was lightly regulated. Some basic, shock, electric safety feature, and that was about it. Everything else was pretty much wide open. Autos and battery electric vehicles are highly regulated items. Think of the crash testing. Think of all the safety requirements and the airbags and so on. These are all following very careful regulations. All the parts have to be verified and certified, and there has to be a gigantic part list of every part submitted to the government so that if there is a recall, they can identify a specific part and so forth. Certification is this part and crash testing, and homologation is spreading this, making sure this is like a world vehicle, meeting regulations across states and across countries and so forth. So, and crash testing are other standards which are less rigorous in China than in the United States, but these are all very technical, red tapey regulations that have to be followed to the letter, and are part of every battery electric vehicle manufacturing march. Okay, and this is what Lordstown Motors can provide to Foxconn. It is going to give this knowledge, and because of course Lordstown Motors was of course Tesla was the first and the biggest and the best, but as far as pickup trucks go, electric pickup trucks, Lordstown Motors was the first. Okay, and they have been working through now 2 derivations of the model of the Endurance. Both of them have been certified, homologated, and crash tested. They know what they're doing. They have hard-won experience with battery electric vehicles, specifically trucks, but not a lot of other companies have this. I mean, certainly Tesla has it, and Rivian is getting it, but Lordstown Motors really has a lot of stuff going on as far as their competence in this area. So this all must be part of the battery electric vehicle. If we're looking at a 90s PC, it's like if the 90s PC had to meet all kind of safety requirements and have all kind of stickers on it saying it passed this test and that test. It's the same idea. So it'd be that this is Lordstown Motors' role, critical to the business model for Foxconn. Okay, this is a highly specialized skill set, and it's rigorous. Okay, and Lordstown Motors has it, and Foxconn doesn't have it. And Foxconn would have to go through 2 years of, stick building vehicles to get this skill set that Lordstown Motors has. So this is where Lordstown Motors fits into their business model. And again, they do this for them via a joint venture at their North American manufacturing hub. So Lordstown Motors is joined at the hip with Foxconn, and I think everybody needs to realize this, that Lordstown Motors is in fact a separate company as well, but also part of this bigger picture, a very big part of this bigger picture. So Foxconn is looking, now this is the thing. Foxconn is always looking at 30% margins. That's their thing. They want to make 30% on the chips and the electronic components in the better electric vehicles. Whether this is the inverters or the windshield wiper motor, control board, and so forth, or the cabling, or the cable connectors, and so forth. So Foxconn is looking to make 30% margins on the chips and electronic components, and as well as 30% on the skateboard. So this is what Foxconn's rub is. They're gonna offload all the pick and shovel certification design work to Lordstown. Then they're going to hand over the requirements to Foxconn, and Foxconn is going to do what they always did and what they're doing with the iPhone. Again, using the iPhone model, with Lordstown being Apple, Foxconn being Foxconn, they're going to build. They're going to eventually, I don't think at this point, but eventually going to build all the chips and all these components that go into this vehicle, and they're going to assemble the vehicle. And the Lordstown is their first iPhone, okay, or their first 90s PC. So again, the endurance is critical to Foxconn, and the association with Lordstown Motors is critical to Foxconn. But again, this 30% margin comes up again and again and again with Foxconn. Uh, it's important to note that Foxconn is running the hub motor line at Lordstown. I think this is going to be an MIH component, at least in some builds. That is the Motion and Harmony Universal Skateboard they're building. MIH vehicles for North America for sure. Whether that will be, and this depends on what a Lordstown Motors agreement is with Elafe. I do know they have exclusive rights in North America. I don't know what someone could say in the comments. I need to look it up. I have it in other videos. The use of these motors are, they might be limited to certain sectors or so forth. But it's important to note, Foxconn is running the hub motor line because Foxconn is an electronics manufacturing company. Lordstown is an engineering and design company and an assembler. So if Foxconn is running that hub motor line, they think it's very important. And they're going to get the speed up on that line, and they're going to probably have 1 million of these motors sitting there waiting to be installed, I'm sure, by the end of all of this. But it's interesting that Foxconn is running that hub motor line. And the hub motor would be considered an electronic component, which Foxconn wants to make the money off of. But anyway, I think that's a very cool aside. And I have down here the Elafe licensing agreement. I seem to remember it was for trucks in North America. I'm not sure. They do have exclusive rights. I'm sure they can renegotiate or expand that with Elafe if they wanted to, depending on how things would work. Elafe is building a manufacturing facility in the United States, in North America, to manufacture a specialized hub motor, which is somewhat smaller and lighter, for the Aptera electric vehicle. So they're going to be manufacturing in the United States. However, I believe the model number is 1500 for the Elafe motor in the Lordstown motors. And I do believe Lordstown can change that, can develop their own motor flavors off of that basic design. So, summary. This is it. Lordstown Motors is critical to the Foxconn business model. Okay? Because the idea is all of these vehicles coming out of Foxconn in North America are going to come out of the hub, and that is going to be Lordstown. And who's going to design and do all the engineering, certification, crash testing, and homologation? Who's going to be the compliance arm of Foxconn? It's going to be Lordstown Motors. Okay, and of course, these vehicles are going to be sold worldwide, many of them. And again, Lordstown Motors is right at the center of this effort as well. So homologation, the process of certifying that can be sold worldwide. So LMC is the battery electric vehicle compliance wing of Foxconn. It has been assimilated. It is still an independent company. However, this is what Lordstown is as regarding Foxconn, regulatory compliance wing of Foxconn. And it's making sure, Lordstown Motors is making sure engineering, design, crash testing, safety, and regulations for all white label BEVs comply with regulations worldwide. So, in other words, now I have white labeled BEVs. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is going to include the Fisker Pear. And now we have the Monarch tractors going through Lordstown. Monarch tractor is an electric farm tractor. Very cool. They have signed a contract to start manufacturing these tractors in Lordstown in 2023. These are smaller than normal tractors. Cool thing about these is you can group them in like groups of 5, and they all follow instructions, and they can be autonomous, or it's a very cool, revolutionary farm advance. Okay, and it looks like they have the lead in this as well over John Deere and the rest of them. But anyway, getting back to my knitting here. So Lordstown Motors is the regulatory compliance wing, the battery electric vehicle regulatory compliance wing of Foxconn. That's how you could look at it. They're also the design. They finalize the designs. They take the conceptual designs and turn them into buildable projects. So really, Lordstown Motors is the electric vehicle design and engineering group for Foxconn. That is where Lordstown Motors fits into Foxconn. Now, this is an interesting fact. The biggest barrier to entry for battery electrical vehicle manufacturing, like why isn't everybody manufacturing battery electric vehicles? China, they have 10,000 companies. The key is auto manufacturing is a highly regulated industry everywhere in the world, perhaps less slow in China, but still highly regulated. This is the biggest barrier to entry. This regulation, this red tape. Lordstown Motors will ensure compliance with the high safety standards and send a battery electric vehicle off to Foxconn to manufacture. And Foxconn is going to not only put the vehicle together, but just like the iPhone, they're going to the component chips and electronics, everything is going to be made at some point by Foxconn. Okay, so Lordstown Motors is going to do the design, make sure it meets all the compliance and safety standards, and they're going to send it off to Foxconn to build, to source all the parts for and to build. Again, looking at the iPhone model, Lordstown Motors is Apple, Foxconn is Foxconn. Now, just to give you an idea of where Foxconn is, Foxconn 2021 revenues, not the greatest year, $215 billion. Okay? Now, when we compare that to Apple, I have down here, Apple was $365 billion. So Foxconn is, more than half of the valuation of Apple when it comes to revenue. And the big chip maker, TSMC, which is like the second largest industry or the second largest business in Taiwan, did $56 billion. But they have higher margins than Foxconn, so they have a smaller operation. But just to give you an idea, Foxconn, this is Foxconn, okay, and this is Apple. So we're talking the big boys here. This is not. This is the major leagues, okay, and Foxconn is, make no doubt about it, a global player in the major leagues, okay. People just hear the word Foxconn and they just think a lot of sweaty Chinese in there putting them phones together. They're a lot more than that. And I don't want to denigrate anybody, but you know the point I'm trying to make here. And it's just much more than that. But $250 billion. Now, Foxconn has announced their 2022 battery electric targets. So, in other words, they're setting goals and they have tried to project what they're going to be doing in the future. They want to manufacture 500,000 to 750,000 BEVs annually by 2025. Okay, so they're ramping from zero in 2022. So that's basically, I have 4 years here, more like 3 years. Okay, and I would add that a lot of people felt this was the ICE capacity of the Lordstown plant, and a lot of people feel that this could be the battery electric vehicle capacity of Lordstown Motors, although they did not say that. But you can see that by 2025, they're looking to be making a large number of battery electric vehicles. Okay, and if you average that, I mean that's over 500,000 vehicles, which I think is doable. In 2025, their revenue of 34 billion is forecast. Okay, so they're going to make 500 to 750,000 vehicles. They're going to have 34 billion in U.S. dollars in revenue. So that is based on the present valuation. I mean, the present revenue figures. That's 16 to 20% of present revenue. So right now, if you do a breakdown on their revenue, 50% is iPhone, okay? And 20% of their revenue is going to be battery electric. Okay, that equals 70% of their revenue. Then you have cloud computing, and by the way, they just had a beat of their cloud computing efforts in their last quarterly report. Although their iPhone sales were down, the cloud revenue was up. So 70% of the revenue is going to be tied up into these two figures. And I think that these are probably going to switch. I don't know. Maybe the BEV is going to become the dominant revenue generator for Foxconn as the saturation of the iPhone moves forward. So they're looking at revenue. Okay, I did some back of the napkin crunching on this. They're looking at revenue of $45,000 per BEV unit built. So that is what they would be paid for that unit, and then that unit either would be sold in the open market, or they would do a markup on that, or that would be a white label price to a major OEM, and so forth. So if you crunch out that numbers, that's what they're looking at revenue per unit. And of course, well, you can do what you would with that number. I think you know what I'm talking about. Of course, this is all rough stuff. You can go over these numbers yourself and look at it up. Now, if we have, now that's revenue, that's gross. If we have a 30% margin on that, okay, which is what Tesla makes on their vehicles right now is 30%. Honhai or Foxconn has traditionally made a 30% margin on basically everything they've ever done. I think this is like ingrained. This is a number that's ingrained into their culture. That would give them $13,500 of net revenue per unit, which I believe, this is like Tesla level income. And I have EBITDA. I don't know if that's the right term, earning before interest, taxes, and whatever. But that would give you somewhere, based on the numbers that they have put out, um, so kind of net revenue of 7 billion to $10 billion by 2024. And by the way, basically everything Foxconn is working on right now that mentions this target date of 2024. But to give you an idea of where that number is in the battery electric vehicle market, Tesla's last 12 months, ending in June 2024, was 9.51 billion. So, and they have a CAGR of, 336%. But, I think we can expect these same numbers from Foxconn once it gets up to full production, as Lordstown is, and this is what they do. And believe me, if Foxconn wants to get into production, they are the boar. They will get into production, okay? So this is a Tesla equivalent. See these two numbers here? Now, this puts Foxconn 2 years behind Tesla. So that is closing the Tesla gap. And according to their projections, this is what they want to do. And certainly with the endurance architecture and using a hub motor drive system, I think this is going to revolutionize battery electric vehicle manufacturing, and it is going to dramatically increase the speed of manufacture and lower the cost of these manufactured units. But this is where we are. So by 2024, 10 billion, okay, let's say top end, 10 billion, because there is unmet demand and unmet manufacturing capabilities for battery electric vehicles. There just isn't, it's just not there. Anyway, the point is Tesla and Foxconn, and by association, Lordstown Motors, are playing in the same league, okay? And this is all an aspiration right now. But again, this 2024 comes up again and again and again across Foxconn's plans, and is also mentioned by Lordstown. So this is a key date. Of course, Lordstown is going to go into full commercial production. I mean, they're ramping up, but that's going to start next year, Q1 2023. But anyway, just to give you an idea of what this valuation is going to be, this is, again, Foxconn, and this is Lordstown by association. I have down here, margins are not forecast on the BE unit revenue. Okay, they don't give this 30% figure. I applied the 30% figure to get these figures. I do believe that's what they're going to shoot for. As I said, I think it's in their DNA to make 30%. Okay? Okay, Foxconn does now make batteries. Up until just recently, they were doing research in battery chemistry. They just invested $200 million in a new battery plant in Taiwan, which is going to be breaking ground. The U.S. is in a trade negotiation right now with Taiwan. And if they decide to ship these batteries to Lordstown, I think that would probably be part of that trade association. Can they build a battery plant at Lordstown? They sure could. I have in a previous video that Goshen was interested in making batteries as well, for Lordstown Motors, and the Lordstown plant, let's just say. And Goshen is partially in bed with VW. You can look at my video on that. It's called Rumors, uh, so forth. I'll put a link to it somewhere, perhaps in this video. Um, now, so Foxconn is going to make everything eventually. Okay. Now the BEV components Foxconn is likely to make, and this is what they have made in the past: connectors, wiring components, uh, windshield wiper motors and control units, lights and control units for those lights, these types of sub electronic sub assemblies. I'm sure also for the infotainment screen and these types of things would be also things that Foxconn is likely to make. So a lot of these smaller electronics in the battery electric vehicle will be made and sold by Foxconn as well. And I think the inverters and other things necessary for the battery propulsion are going to be made by Foxconn as well. But just to give you an idea, Foxconn isn't just going to put this together like the iPhone. They're going to make all the components that go into this vehicle. Insight looks like I have mentioned this previously. Foxconn has targeted everything for a release in 2024 across all regions and countries and product lines. LMC has stated Q1 23 real ramping of endurance production. And a usual ramp of BEV manufacturing full production is about a year. So it looks like 2024 will be the big bang for Foxconn and Lordstown Motors. And of course, the stock market anticipates this kind of stuff. So, brighter people are going to recognize this. But that's just an interesting insight. Now, let's just talk about the Stellantis partnership, which was mentioned in the podcast. Foxconn aims at designing a family of purpose-built microcontrollers to support Stellantis and third-party customers. Again, these are these electronic components. The partnership intended to develop 4 families of chips. Again, this is Foxconn's bailiwick, that will cover 80% of the company's microcontrollers. Stellantis is a ICE vehicle manufacturer, and these microcontrollers are, I believe, what part of the chip shortage is all about. These are for ABS systems, I think, would be an example of that. But this is a component part development that Foxconn is doing. They're going to design it and build these for Stellantis. Well, the partnership is intended to develop 4 families of chips that will cover more than 80% of the company's microcontroller needs, helping to greatly simplify the supply chain, adoption, and installation of products in the Stellantis vehicles, again, 2024. So this is addressing the chip shortage and so forth. Now, this is the detail. Joint venture will focus on infotainment, telematics, and cloud service platform development. And again, not only is Foxconn building these components, but they also have a cloud division. Okay. And I do believe their Minnesota facility is going to be devoted to the cloud computer center in the United States. Cloud service platform development with software innovations expected to include artificial intelligence, 5G, over-the-air upgrades, e-commerce, and smart cockpit integrations. They have a whole multi-screen infotainment. This is the new generation of vehicles, the new electric vehicles. I think YT and Faraday Future really pioneered this maybe 10 years ago. And the new FF91 is a good example of what they are aspiring to here. If you want to check that out. Mobile Drive, the new 50-50 joint venture. Okay, and again, we're 45-55, they're 50-50. And announced by Stellantis is aimed at accelerating development timelines to bring innovative in-vehicle user experiences enabled by advanced consumer electronics. And again, you can look at the Faraday Future vehicle for an example of what they're talking about here. All three all-new AI-powered technology platforms will be deployed at scale starting in 2024. STLA Brain, Smart Cockpit, and Auto Drive. So you're talking about artificial intelligence, I'm sure voice controls. The Smart Cockpit is the multi-screen display throughout the vehicle, and Auto Drive is self-driving. And again, this is 2024. Approximately 4 billion in they're expecting to generate 4 billion euros in annual revenues by 2026 and 20 billion by 2030, generated by software-enabled product offerings and subscriptions. So we have Foxconn also getting in on this. The board, again, 50-50 joint partnership, going in big time on this. And I am sure that they are going to be developing all of the hardware components for this as well, microcontrollers and so forth. Now, I cannot find any mention of a joint venture battery electric vehicle production agreement with Stellantis. That doesn't exclude contract manufacturing for Stellantis by Foxconn, but it looks like their primary focus is subsystems, boards, and controllers in custom chip design and manufacturing. So, again, the podcast mentions developing a vehicle for the European market, and maybe this is inside information. But anyway, in way of a summary, when you look at all the things Foxconn is doing, they're basically sticking to their knitting. They've always made specialized interchangeable chips and boards and components, and then use these components in contract manufacturing. So, in other words, they make the components and they put them together. And this is the iPhone is the perfect example. They are just adapting this model to battery electric vehicles. And again, this is the 90s PC business model applied to battery electric manufacturing. So you look at the new Foxconn BEVs as a PC on wheels. And this draws in the MIH platform with interchangeable component parts. So, as I said, you get a PC in the 90s, you open it up. What kind of power supply do you want? How many watts? What make? This is all interchangeable. This is all going to be standardized for various manufacturers to follow. I have down here 13,500. This is a slight change from the previous number, I think. 13,500 net revenue per unit would be 10 billion, 7 to 10 billion by 2024. So all of these tentacles are going to all join up, and they're going to form one giant Borg cube that's going to come alive in 2024. Okay. And this is just going to be the start, and they expect the start to be $7 to $10 billion. So, not quite on par with Tesla, but certainly biting at the heels of Tesla. I would make a prediction going to be ahead of Ford and perhaps ahead of GM because they're not going to have the legacy infrastructure to deal with that these other two factors are going to have. And just looking at now, if you want to follow Foxconn's stock, because this is closely associated with Lordstown Motors, this is the symbol. They trade on the Taiwan market. If you use Google Finance as one of your tracking stock tracking portfolio vehicles, they do list this stock. And here is a recent chart, as you can see, and I have a analyst coverage from Taiwan talking about Foxconn. And as you can see, this stock has taken a hit in the recent downturn, as has all stocks, basically. The point being, the analyst from Taiwan said this stock, they expected it to remain at like this level, at like 50. I don't know where 50 is on this chart. I guess, well, whatever. Anyway, they expect it to remain at this level flat until they get a proof of concept battery electric vehicle into production. That is the endurance. So this this price could possibly go up. Um, if you look at the business model changing and opportunity for growth, not a financial advisor, but certainly Foxconn is making all the right moves, planning their entry. And I have here, they had muted revenue from lower iPhone production because the iPhone market's getting saturated. Of course, Apple is diversifying into services, and it's not affecting them as much. But iPhone sales slumping does affect Foxconn. However, this was overshadowed by the growth in their cloud computing division. So this is the other impotence for BEV manufacturing right here. Okay, as we said, I believe 50% of income of Foxconn is iPhone. So they are serious about diversifying. All right, this is mxux. I just wanted to give you a look at what Foxconn is up to. It's a very interesting company. It's gigantic. I don't think many people know exactly what they do. I hope this has given you an idea of what Foxconn does and how critical and how key Lordstown Motors is to Foxconn and the Lordstown, Ohio plant. This is their North American hub. And the North American auto market is a plum in the world. Everybody wants the North American market. So, all of this looks great to me, by the way, to have such a deep thinking partner in Foxconn with Lordstown. I can see why Niavaji and Hightower both are excited about the endurance, but even more excited about this joint venture because this can open up floodgates of business. And the present status right now is endurance is in production. Trust me, it's in production. Okay? Anybody that tells you that truck isn't in production, it's in production. Are they cranking out thousands an hour? No, but it is in production. Okay? And they have the Fisker pair, which is going to come out of the same plant. And I think that Lordstown is going to actually engineer the innards of that and make that certification and homologation and crash testing for that vehicle. And now they have the Monarch tractor, which diversifies their product line. And this is a very interesting cutting edge vehicle as well. And I would not doubt that Lordstown Motors has something to do with adapting that to their manufacturing facility there and the engineering and design involved in that. And that also is going to start next year, Monarch. So we've got the Endurance in production now. We've got the Pear and the Monarch tractor coming next year. By the way, all three of these vehicles are going to be built on the same line at the same time. That is one of the capabilities of the Lordstown Motors plant. And we have a MIH vehicle planned. We have the Lordstown Motors high top van planned. There are many, many, many exciting catalysts that are going to be developed here over the next 12 months. So thanks a lot for watching. This is very exciting news to me. I hope this helped you understand Foxconn and how Lordstown fits into the Foxconn board cube. All right, this is MXUX. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.